Montana Territory, 1871. Liam Bradshaw stood at the weathered fence post of his ranch, scanning the distant horizon where the Montana sky met the rugged foothills. At 25, he had already faced more than his share of frontier hardships. The vast tract of land he had purchased 3 years ago with savings from his cattle-driving days stretched before him, a promise of independence that now felt like a chain around his neck. His small herd of cattle grazed in the distance, but the ranch house behind him stood eerily quiet, a reminder of what he lacked. "A man builds his own cage out here," he muttered to himself, the spring breeze carrying away his words. "The land demands too much for a man to share his life with anyone else." He turned back toward the modest 2-story ranch house he'd built with his own hands. It was solid, practical, and desperately empty. The fields needed tending, the cattle needed moving, and the house needed life. But Liam had convinced himself that the harsh realities of ranch life left no room for companionship. Better to face the wilderness alone than to bring someone else into its dangers and disappointments. His neighbor Jasper, 20 years his senior, had warned him when he'd purchased the land. "This country will take everything you give it and demand more. A man needs help out here, more than just hired hands who drift with the seasons." But Liam had seen too many frontier marriages crumble under the weight of isolation and hardship. His own parents had barely spoken to each other in the years before pneumonia took his mother. The frontier might promise freedom, but it extracted a brutal price in loneliness. That morning, he'd prepared his own breakfast as usual, burnt coffee and half-raw biscuits that could have broken a window. His hands, calloused from roping cattle and mending fences, weren't made for kitchen work. The men he occasionally hired for seasonal work complained endlessly about the food, and none stayed longer than necessary. His ranch was surviving, but it wasn't thriving. And with each passing season, the emptiness of the house seemed to grow like a living thing. After a long morning of mending fences in the north pasture, Liam rode into the small town of Cottonwood Springs. The main street bustled with the usual activity, the general store doing steady business, the saloon already filling with the early afternoon crowd, and the post office serving as the town's communication hub. He dismounted outside the general store, securing his dappled gray gelding to the hitching post. Inside, Mr. Henderson was helping a young family with supplies. "Afternoon, Liam," Henderson called out when he noticed him. "What can I do for you today?" "Just the usual supplies," Liam replied, setting his hat on the counter. "And some information. You know anyone looking for honest work around here? I need help at the ranch, someone who can cook a decent meal and manage the household affairs." Henderson stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Most folks looking for work want something temporary, passing through to Oregon or California. A permanent position at a remote ranch isn't appealing to many." Liam's shoulders slumped slightly. "I can pay fair wages. Just need someone reliable. Why don't you post a notice?" Henderson suggested, gesturing to the community board near the door. "Be specific about what you need. Never know who might be looking for just such an opportunity." After a moment's consideration, Liam nodded. He scrawled out a notice with the stub of a pencil Henderson provided. "Ranch cook wanted. Permanent position at Bradshaw Ranch, 12 miles west of town. Room and board provided, fair wages. Must be capable of managing household affairs and preparing meals. Inquire at general store or come to ranch directly." He stepped back, examining his handiwork. It seemed straightforward enough. Not that he expected much to come of it, but at least he could tell himself he'd tried. As Henderson wrapped Liam's supplies, the shopkeeper added, "You know, a young man with a good spread like yours should be thinking about more than just a cook." Liam tensed. "The ranch takes everything I've got, Henderson. There's no room for distractions." "Family isn't a distraction, son. It's the reason men like you and me build something in this wilderness. Otherwise, what's it all for?" Liam didn't answer as he gathered his supplies and headed back out to his horse. The question followed him the entire ride home, whispering on the wind that rippled through the tall prairie grass. 12 miles out of town, with the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the valley, Liam could finally see the outlines of his ranch house. In the golden light, it almost looked welcoming, until he remembered the cold fireplace and empty rooms waiting inside. "What's it all for?" Henderson's question echoed in his mind as he approached the silent house, carrying the weight of unspoken loneliness with him. 3 days passed with no response to Liam's notice. He told himself he hadn't expected anything different and threw himself into ranch work with renewed intensity, as if physical exhaustion might dull the hollow feeling that greeted him each evening. On the 4th day, precisely at noon, the sound of wagon wheels broke the midday quiet. Liam was repairing a bridle on the front porch when he heard the approach. Shading his eyes against the sun, he made out a small wagon coming up the long drive, drawn by a single chestnut mare. As the wagon drew closer, he could see a woman handling the reins with practiced ease. 2 small figures sat beside her. Children, he realized with surprise. The woman guided the wagon to a stop near the hitching post, and for a long moment, Liam simply stared. She was younger than he'd expected, perhaps 22 or 23, with rich brown hair tucked beneath a simple bonnet. Her blue calico dress, though clearly mended in places, was clean and pressed. But it was her face that caught him off guard, delicate features framed by wisps of hair that had escaped her bonnet, and eyes that reflected both determination and uncertainty. "Mr. Bradshaw," she called, her voice carrying across the yard. Liam set aside the bridle and stood. "That's me. I'm Dahlia Evans," she replied, setting the brake on the wagon. "I've come about the cook position." The 2 children peered at him with undisguised curiosity, a boy of perhaps 6 and a girl who couldn't be more than 4. The sight of them made Liam's stomach tighten. He hadn't considered that someone with children might answer his notice. "Ma'am," he began awkwardly, approaching the wagon. "I'm not sure." "Before you say anything," she interrupted, her voice gaining strength, "I saw your notice in town. It said nothing about children being unwelcome, and I can assure you mine won't be underfoot. They're well-behaved and can help with small chores." She hesitated, then added, "I'm a widow, Mr. Bradshaw. My husband died in a mining accident last winter. I need the work, and from the look of your notice, you need a cook." The directness of her gaze challenged him. Up close, he could see she was beautiful in an unassuming way, the kind of beauty that came from character rather than mere features. Her eyes were a clear hazel, intelligent and unwavering. "It's not that," Liam said, though it partly was. "Ranch life is hard on grown men. It's no place for a woman and children," she finished for him. "Mr. Bradshaw, we've been living in a tent outside of town for the past month while I've looked for work. I think we can manage a solid roof and regular meals." She straightened her shoulders. "I'm an excellent cook. I managed a boarding house in Colorado before I married. And my children know how to behave." As if to prove her point, the 2 children sat perfectly still, though the little girl's eyes were wide with what might have been fear or excitement. Something in Dahlia's proud stance stirred an unexpected feeling in Liam. Here was someone who had faced her own frontier hardships and hadn't broken. The thought of turning her away suddenly seemed impossible. "Can you make biscuits that don't threaten a man's teeth?" he asked, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. A small smile touched her lips. "Mr. Bradshaw, I can make biscuits that would make angels weep." The boy giggled at this, quickly covering his mouth with his hand. Liam hesitated only a moment longer. "There's a small room off the kitchen that might serve for you and the children. It was meant to be a pantry, but it's clean and dry." He gestured toward the house. "I can show you, if you'd like to see before deciding." Relief flooded her features. "Thank you. We'd like that." As she helped the children down from the wagon, introducing them as James and Emma, Liam felt the strangest sensation, as if the house behind him had suddenly awakened from a long slumber, watching this unexpected turn of events with as much surprise as he felt himself. The room off the kitchen was indeed small, but when Dahlia saw it, she nodded approvingly. "This will do nicely. We don't need much space." She ran a hand over the rough wooden shelves. "Though I'll need somewhere to store provisions." "There's a root cellar beneath the kitchen," Liam explained, "and I can build more shelving in here if needed." The children had remained quiet, standing close to their mother, but now Emma tugged at Dahlia's skirt. "Mama, is this our new home?" she whispered, though loud enough for Liam to hear. Dahlia looked to Liam, a question in her eyes. "If your mother wants the position," Liam said, addressing the little girl directly, "then yes, this would be your home." "Do you have cows?" James asked, finding his voice. "Pa said we'd have cows someday." The mention of their father created a momentary awkwardness, but Liam nodded. "I do have cows, quite a few of them, and horses too. Can we see them?" James asked eagerly. "James," Dahlia admonished gently. We haven't even settled the matter of employment yet. Liam found himself smiling. It's settled as far as I'm concerned, Mrs. Evans. The position is yours if you want it. Room and board for you and your children, plus $10 a month. I'll need breakfast before sunup, dinner at midday when I'm near the house, and supper in the evening. And general household management? She asked. Yes. Keeping the house in order, washing, mending when needed. He hesitated. It's not an easy life out here, Mrs. Evans. We're 12 miles from town, and winters can be harsh. I understand frontier life, Mr. Bradshaw. Her voice held no self-pity, only calm acceptance of reality. And I accept your terms. The decisiveness caught him by surprise. Just like that, she confirmed. We can move our things in today, if that suits you. Of course, Liam said, suddenly aware of the dusty state of the kitchen and his own appearance. He hadn't shaved that morning, and his shirt bore the stains of the morning's work. I'll help bring in your belongings. As they returned to the wagon, Liam was struck by how few possessions the small family had. Some clothing, a few cooking implements, a small wooden box that Dahlia handled with particular care, and 2 well-worn books. Is this everything? He asked, unable to hide his surprise. We traveled light from Colorado, she said simply, and sold what we could after. She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. After her husband died, Liam filled in silently. Within an hour, Dahlia and her children were installed in their new quarters. Liam excused himself to tend to the horses, giving them space to settle in. When he returned to the house 2 hours later, he was greeted by the unfamiliar and enticing smell of real cooking. The kitchen had been transformed. The perpetually dirty surface of the table gleamed. The floor had been swept, and Dahlia stood at the stove, stirring something that made Liam's stomach growl in anticipation. I hope you don't mind, she said, noticing him in the doorway. I found some beans and salt pork in your pantry, along with a few potatoes that were still good. It's not much, but it's a start. It smells better than anything that's come out of that stove since I built it, Liam admitted. James sat at the table, carefully folding clean dishcloths, while Emma arranged wildflowers in a tin cup she must have found somewhere in the kitchen. The domesticity of the scene struck Liam with unexpected force. For the first time since he'd built the ranch house, it felt like a home rather than merely shelter. Supper will be ready shortly, Dahlia said, turning back to the stove. I hope you don't mind that I've let the children help. They need to feel useful. No, I don't mind, Liam said, though in truth, he had no idea how to interact with children. His own childhood had ended early, working alongside his taciturn father on other people's ranches. I'll just get cleaned up. That first meal was a revelation. The beans were seasoned perfectly, the cornbread light and golden, and even the coffee tasted like something meant for human consumption rather than punishment. Conversation was stilted at first. The children watched him with wide eyes, and Dahlia kept the discussion to practical matters. What supplies were needed from town, the schedule of meals, where she might plant a small kitchen garden. Do you have many men working here? She asked as she served him a second helping of beans without being asked. Just me. Most days, Liam replied. I hire extra hands during calving season and for the roundup, but that's weeks away yet. She nodded thoughtfully. Then I'll plan meals accordingly. Though you should eat more vegetables, Mr. Bradshaw. A man can't live on coffee and bacon alone. There was no criticism in her tone, only practical concern, but Liam felt strangely defensive. I've managed well enough. Have you? She asked, her eyes taking in his lean frame. A man doing the work you do needs proper nourishment. Before he could respond, Emma spoke up. Mama makes the best apple cake. Pa said it was better than his mama's, but we're not supposed to tell Grandma Butler that. The mention of her husband created another awkward pause, but Dahlia recovered quickly. Well, we'll need apples for that, which we don't have yet. But perhaps Mr. Bradshaw would enjoy it someday. Liam, he said abruptly, if you're going to be living here, you might as well use my given name. She seemed to consider this before nodding. Liam then, and I'm Dahlia. That evening, after the children had been put to bed in their small room, Liam sat on the porch, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of someone else moving about his house. The windows glowed with lamplight, and occasionally he could hear Dahlia humming softly as she finished tidying the kitchen. It was strange having others in his space, strangers really, for all that they'd shared a meal. Strangers who had somehow, in the span of a single afternoon, begun to transform his house into something he didn't quite recognize. The door opened behind him, and Dahlia stepped out onto the porch. "The kitchen's all set for morning," she said. "Is there anything else you need tonight?" Liam shook his head. "No, thank you." She nodded and turned to go back inside. But he surprised himself by speaking again. "Your husband," he said. "The mining accident. Was it in the silver mines?" She paused, her hand on the door frame. "Yes. Near Central City. There was a collapse. 8 men were lost." Her voice was steady, but he could hear the carefully controlled emotion beneath the words. "I'm sorry," he said, inadequate words for such a loss. "Thank you." She was quiet for a moment before adding, "He was a good man. He deserved better than a cold grave in mining country." She took a deep breath. "But we can't change what's happened. We can only move forward." "Is that why you came all the way to Montana Territory?" "Partly," she admitted. "And partly because there were too many widows in Central City already, all competing for too few positions. I thought we might have a better chance somewhere new." She gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. "Though I didn't expect somewhere new would be quite so remote." "It's quiet," Liam agreed. "Too quiet most days." "Not anymore," she said with a hint of humor. "Not with Emma around. She's the quieter of the two, believe it or not." This surprised a chuckle from him. "I'll keep that in mind." "Good night, mister," she caught herself. "Good night, Liam." "Good night, Dahlia." As he listened to her footsteps retreat into the house, Liam tried to ignore the strange feeling in his chest, something like apprehension mixed with an emotion he couldn't quite name. He told himself it was merely the adjustment to having others in his space after so long alone. But as he sat watching the stars emerge in the vast Montana sky, he couldn't shake the sense that something fundamental had shifted with the arrival of Dahlia Evans and her children, something that had nothing to do with hot meals or a clean kitchen. The next few weeks established a routine that gradually began to feel natural. Liam would wake before dawn to find coffee already brewing and breakfast waiting. After eating, he'd head out to work the ranch, sometimes not returning until evening. Dahlia kept the house immaculate, prepared meals that made him realize how poorly he'd been eating, and slowly began to add touches that transformed the stark rooms. Curtains appeared at the windows, fashioned from fabric she must have brought with her. The main room gained a rag rug before the fireplace. Wildflowers in various containers brightened the table and windowsills. And somehow, despite the modest wages he paid her, she managed to plant a kitchen garden that promised future vegetables. The children adapted quickly to ranch life. James followed Liam whenever permitted, asking endless questions about cattle and horses. Emma was shyer but would often sit on the porch steps in the evening, singing softly to her rag doll while Liam repaired tack or cleaned his rifle. 3 weeks after their arrival, Liam returned from checking fence lines to find James struggling to carry a bucket of water from the well. "Here, let me help with that," he offered, taking the heavy bucket. "I can do it," James insisted, his small face flushed with effort. "Pa said I'm the man of the family now. I have to help Mama." The word struck Liam unexpectedly hard. "Your pa was right that you should help your mama," he said carefully. "But you're also still a boy, James. And boys need time to be boys." "What does that mean?" James asked, his brow furrowed. Liam considered the question seriously. "It means you help when you can, but you also play and learn and grow strong." He set the bucket down. "Has anyone shown you how to skip stones on the creek yet?" James shook his head. "Well, that's something every boy should know. Bring the water to your mama, and then let's see if we can find some good flat stones." That afternoon, Liam found himself at the creek that ran along the eastern edge of his property, teaching James the proper technique for skipping stones across water. The boy's delight when he managed to make a stone skip 3 times was infectious. From the ridge above the creek, Dahlia watched them, Emma's hand in hers. Liam became aware of their presence and glanced up, expecting disapproval for distracting the boy from his chores. Instead, Dahlia's face held a soft expression he hadn't seen before. "Emma wants to try too," she called down. Soon all 4 of them were at the creek's edge, Liam demonstrating the wrist action needed for a good skip. When Emma's first attempt sank immediately, her face fell. "Here," Liam said, kneeling beside her. "Hold it like this." He gently positioned the stone between her thumb and forefinger. "Now try again." With his guidance, her second stone skipped once before sinking. Her delighted laugh echoed across the water. "Mama, did you see?" she cried. I did, Dahlia confirmed, smiling. You're a natural. As the children continued practicing, Dahlia moved to stand beside Liam. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For this. She gestured to the children. They need moments like this. After their father. She trailed off. Well, there hasn't been much laughter. Liam watched James showing his sister a stone he'd found. They're good children. Yes, they are. She glanced at him. You're good with them. Have you been around children before? No, he admitted. Never had much family growing up. Just my father after my mother passed, and he wasn't one for games or teaching. You have a natural way with them, she observed. James already looks up to you. The observation made Liam uncomfortable, though not in an unpleasant way. He's just curious about ranch life. It's more than that, Dahlia said softly. But I won't embarrass you by insisting. Before he could respond, James called out for Liam to watch his next attempt. The moment passed, but Liam found himself thinking about her words later that night as he sat on the porch, listening to the now familiar sounds of Dahlia putting the children to bed. The idea that James might look up to him carried a weight of responsibility he hadn't anticipated when he'd posted that notice for a cook. He'd wanted meals and a clean house, not the complicated emotions that came with having a young boy follow him around with admiring eyes. Yet he couldn't deny the satisfaction he'd felt teaching James to skip stones, or the unexpected warmth in his chest when Emma had succeeded in her attempts. It was dangerously easy to imagine more afternoons like this, showing the children the small joys of ranch life. Dangerous because none of this was permanent. Dahlia was his employee, not family. She and her children would eventually move on to something better, a life in town, perhaps, or with family back east. Getting attached would only lead to the same empty house in the end, but with the added pain of loss. The frontier's no place for attachments, he reminded himself, staring out at the darkening land. Just look after your cattle and your land. That's all that matters. But even as he thought the words, he knew they rang hollow. The following Saturday, Dahlia asked if they might all go into town for supplies and Sunday services. Liam hadn't attended church in years, but he agreed to take them, telling himself it was only practical since they needed provisions anyway. The ride into Cottonwood Springs was filled with the children's excited chatter. They rarely left the ranch, and the prospect of town was a grand adventure. Liam found himself pointing out landmarks and telling them about the area's history, information he'd never bothered sharing with anyone before. In town, heads turned as Liam helped Dahlia and the children down from the wagon in front of the general store. He was uncomfortably aware of the curious glances and whispered conversations. Henderson emerged from the store, his eyebrows rising at the sight of the children. Well, Mr. Bradshaw, seems your notice brought unexpected results, Henderson observed with barely concealed amusement. Mrs. Evans is my cook and housekeeper, Liam said stiffly. She and her children have been a welcome addition to the ranch. I'm sure they have, Henderson replied with a knowing smile that made Liam want to punch him. Mrs. Evans, a pleasure to meet you properly. I believe we only spoke briefly when you inquired about Mr. Bradshaw's notice. Mr. Henderson, Dahlia acknowledged politely. We've come for supplies and to attend services tomorrow. Of course, Henderson nodded. Though I must say, this is the first time I've seen Mr. Bradshaw in town on a Saturday when it wasn't absolutely necessary. And mentioning church, no less. Liam felt his face warm. We needed supplies. Indeed, Henderson said, not bothering to hide his amusement. Well, come in and let me help you with your list. Mrs. Henderson will want to meet you and the children, Mrs. Evans. She's always saying we need more families in town. As they entered the store, Liam noticed several women gathered near the fabric section, whispering behind their hands as they watched Dahlia and the children. He felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness. While Dahlia selected groceries with Henderson's help, Liam found himself watching her interact with others. She was polite but reserved with the curious townspeople, deflecting personal questions with practiced ease. He realized she must have endured similar scrutiny in Colorado after her husband's death. Outside the store, he encountered Frank Wilson, one of the ranchers who owned property adjoining his. Bradshaw, Wilson greeted him. Haven't seen you in town in months. His eyes drifted to the store window where Dahlia was visible helping Emma try on a bonnet. Heard you got yourself a pretty widow out at your place. Mrs. Evans is my housekeeper, Liam said evenly. Wilson chuckled. Sure she is. Can't say I blame you. Lonely out there by yourself. And she's a fine-looking woman. That's enough, Wilson, Liam said, his voice hardening. Mrs. Evans is a respectable widow working to support her children. I won't have her spoken about that way. Wilson held up his hands. No offense meant. Just making conversation. He glanced toward the store again. Though you might want to consider making the arrangement more permanent before someone else gets ideas. Woman like that won't stay single long out here. The suggestion hit Liam like a physical blow, though he kept his expression neutral. I'm not looking for a wife, Wilson. Everyone's looking for a wife out here, Bradshaw. Whether they admit it or not. Wilson tipped his hat. See you at the cattlemen's meeting next month. As Wilson walked away, Liam remained rooted to the spot, unsettled by both the insinuation about Dahlia and his own visceral reaction to it. The idea of Dahlia considering offers from other men shouldn't bother him. She was free to make whatever choices suited her and her children best. Yet the thought left him with a hollow feeling in his stomach. When Dahlia emerged from the store with the children, he forced a smile. Got everything you need? Yes, thank you. She studied his face. Is everything all right? You look troubled. Just thinking about ranch business, he lied. We should secure rooms at the hotel if we're staying for services tomorrow. That evening, after settling the children in their hotel room, Dahlia found Liam sitting alone on the hotel's small porch. She hesitated before joining him, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders against the evening chill. The children are asleep, she said, taking the chair beside him. They were exhausted from all the excitement. Liam nodded, staring out at the quiet main street. Most of the town's activity was centered at the saloon down the street, where piano music and occasional bursts of laughter drifted on the night air. I wanted to thank you, Dahlia said after a moment, for bringing us to town, for the new bonnet for Emma. She's thrilled with it. It was nothing, Liam said. She needed one. It wasn't nothing to her. Dahlia's voice was soft. Or to me. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the occasional passerby on the street. I noticed people talking, she said finally. About us. About me being at your ranch. Liam tensed. People always talk in small towns. It doesn't matter. It matters if it causes problems for you, she said carefully. If my presence at the ranch is creating gossip, the only problem would be if the gossip bothered you, Liam interrupted. I couldn't care less what Henderson or anyone else thinks. She studied him in the dim light from the hotel windows. It doesn't bother me. I've endured worse than gossip. She hesitated. But the children, I don't want them to face unkindness because of people's assumptions. Has anyone been unkind to them today? He asked sharply. No, she assured him. Everyone has been perfectly polite. Too polite, in some cases, which often hides judgment. Liam turned to face her fully. Dahlia, if you want to leave the ranch, find a position in town. No, she said quickly. That's not what I'm saying at all. The ranch it's been good for us. For the children. They're happier than I've seen them since before their father died. She took a deep breath. I just want to be sure I'm not causing difficulties for you. You're not, he said firmly. The opposite, in fact. The ranch hasn't run this smoothly since I built it. She smiled at that, the tension leaving her shoulders. Well then, that's settled. But it wasn't settled, not really. As they sat there in comfortable silence, Liam was acutely aware of her presence beside him. The subtle scent of lavender that seemed to follow her, the way the lamplight caught in her hair. And beneath that awareness ran a current of something deeper, something he wasn't ready to name. Sunday services the next morning brought more curious glances and whispered comments, but Dahlia held her head high, the children neat and well-behaved beside her. Liam sat stiffly in the hard pew, uncomfortable with the ritual, but unwilling to leave Dahlia to face the town's scrutiny alone. After services, several women approached Dahlia with invitations to join the Ladies' Aid Society or attend quilting bees when she came to town. She accepted graciously but without commitment, and Liam noticed the subtle barriers she maintained, friendly but not inviting closeness. On the ride back to the ranch, with the children dozing in the back of the wagon, Liam finally asked the question that had been on his mind. Do you miss town life? Having other women to talk with, social gatherings? Dahlia considered the question seriously before answering. Sometimes, but I've learned to be self-sufficient. She glanced at the sleeping children. And I prefer the ranch to what we had before. The children are thriving there. And you? Liam pressed. Are you content? She looked surprised by the question. Yes, I believe I am. More than I expected to be. She smiled slightly. Though I wouldn't object to more books. I've read the Bible and the Pilgrim's Progress so many times I nearly know them by heart. I'll bring books next time I go to town, he promised immediately. Her smile widened. That would be wonderful. Thank you. As they crested the final hill before the ranch came into view, Liam was struck by how different it looked to him now. 3 months ago, it had been just buildings and land, his property, but not truly a home. Now, with the kitchen garden sprouting green, curtains in the windows, and the knowledge that warmth and company waited inside, it had transformed into something else entirely. It looks different, doesn't it? Dahlia said quietly, as if reading his thoughts. More like a home. Yes, Liam agreed, surprised by her perception. It does. Their eyes met briefly, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of the changes that had occurred, not just to the ranch, but to themselves. Spring gave way to early summer. The kitchen garden thrived under Dahlia's care, providing fresh vegetables for their meals. The children grew more confident exploring the ranch, though always within the boundaries Liam and Dahlia had set for their safety. One sweltering afternoon in early July, Liam returned from checking cattle in the south pasture to find the house unusually quiet. Entering the kitchen, he discovered a note from Dahlia explaining that she had taken the children to the creek to cool off and wash clothes. He found them there, the children splashing in the shallow water while Dahlia spread washing on bushes to dry. She had removed her shoes and stockings, and the hem of her skirt was tucked up to keep it from the water. The sight of her bare ankles made Liam pause, suddenly feeling like an intruder. He was about to retreat when James spotted him. Liam, come see the fish I caught with my hands. Too late to leave now, Liam approached the creek bank. James proudly displayed a small trout he had trapped in a pool created by stones. That's impressive work, James, Liam said, genuinely impressed by the boy's patience and skill. Mama says we can cook it for supper, James said excitedly. I caught food for us, just like Pa used to. You certainly did, Liam agreed, seeing the pride in the boy's eyes. He glanced at Dahlia, who was watching the exchange with a soft smile. Good thing your mama knows how to cook fish properly. Will you eat with us? James asked. I caught enough for everyone. I wouldn't miss it, Liam assured him. Emma, who had been shyly hanging back, now approached. I helped too, she said. I found the special rocks to make the pool. Then you both contributed to our supper, Liam said solemnly. That's how it works on a ranch. Everyone does their part. Emma beamed at being included in ranch work, however small her contribution. As the children returned to their play, closely supervised by Dahlia, Liam sat on a fallen log nearby. The domesticity of the scene struck him with unexpected force. This was what a family looked like, children playing, a mother watching over them, the promise of a meal shared together later. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine what it would be like if this were truly his family, not just his employee and her children. The thought was both enticing and terrifying. Dahlia joined him on the log, her bare feet still dangling in the creek water. The heat was unbearable in the house, she explained, and the washing needed doing anyway. You don't need to explain, Liam said. It's a sensible solution. They watched the children in comfortable silence for a while before Dahlia spoke again. James talks about you constantly, you know. Liam showed me how to mend a fence. Liam says cattle need checking every day. He's memorizing everything you tell him. Liam felt warmth spread through his chest. He's a quick learner. Sharp mind. He needs a man's influence, Dahlia said quietly. I do my best, but there are things I can't teach him. The statement hung between them, laden with implications neither was ready to address directly. I'm happy to teach him what I know, Liam said carefully. Both of them. Emma's got a good head for figures. I noticed when she was helping count supplies last week. Dahlia smiled. She does. Takes after her father that way. She hesitated. It's good for them to have you in their lives, Liam. I want you to know that. Before Liam could respond, a distant rumble of thunder interrupted the moment. Dahlia looked up at the darkening sky to the west. We should get back to the house, she said, rising quickly. Children, time to go home. A storm's coming. As they gathered the washing and hurried back to the ranch house, the first fat drops of rain began to fall. By the time they reached the porch, the sky had opened up completely, drenching them in the final yards to the house. Inside, Dahlia quickly sent the children to change into dry clothes while she and Liam stood dripping in the kitchen. "Your shirt is soaked through," she observed. "You should change before you catch cold." "I've been wet before," Liam said, though he could feel the chill setting in. Dahlia gave him a reproachful look. "And I suppose you've been sick before too. That doesn't mean you should invite it." She reached out without thinking and brushed a strand of wet hair from his forehead. The gesture was casual, the touch brief, but it sent a jolt through Liam like summer lightning. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither moved. The spell was broken by James calling from the other room, asking where his dry shirt was. Dahlia stepped back, a flush rising to her cheeks. "I should help him," she murmured. "Yes," Liam agreed, his voice rougher than he intended. "And I should change." That evening, as they ate James's fish by lamplight, the storm continued to rage outside. The atmosphere inside the house, however, had shifted in some subtle but unmistakable way. Every accidental touch as dishes were passed seemed charged with meaning. Every glance held questions neither was prepared to ask. After the children were in bed, Liam sat at the kitchen table while Dahlia finished tidying up. The routine was familiar now, comfortable, yet tonight it felt different. "More coffee?" she offered, holding up the pot. "Please." As she poured, a particularly loud crack of thunder shook the house, making her jump. Coffee spilled across the table and onto Liam's hand. "I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, quickly grabbing a cloth to mop up the spill. "It's nothing," he assured her, but when she took his hand to check for burns, he didn't pull away. Her fingers were cool against his skin, gentle as she examined the reddening area. "It's not too bad," she said softly, "but we should cool it." She went to the basin and returned with a damp cloth, which she carefully wrapped around his hand. The tenderness of the gesture made his throat tighten. "Dahlia," he began, not entirely sure what he wanted to say. She looked up, her face close to his, her eyes questioning. "Yes." The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken words and possibilities. Liam leaned forward slightly, drawn by something stronger than his own will. A small voice from the doorway broke the tension. "Mama?" The thunder scared me. They both turned to see Emma standing there, clutching her rag doll, eyes wide with fear. Dahlia immediately went to her daughter, kneeling to embrace her. "It's just a storm, sweetheart. It can't hurt you inside the house. Can I stay with you until it stops?" Emma pleaded. "Of course." Dahlia glanced at Liam apologetically. "I should get her back to bed." "Of course," Liam echoed, the moment broken. "Good night, Emma. Remember, ranch folk aren't afraid of a little thunder." The girl managed a small smile. "Good night, Liam." As Dahlia led her daughter back to their room, Liam remained at the table, his hands still wrapped in the damp cloth. Whatever had almost happened, whatever he had almost said or done, perhaps it was better left unspoken. Dahlia was his employee, dependent on him for her livelihood and shelter. Any advance from him would be an abuse of that position. And yet, the look in her eyes when she had touched his hand had suggested something more than simple concern for an employer. He shook his head, trying to clear it of dangerous thoughts. "Focus on the ranch," he muttered to himself. "That's all that matters." But as he blew out the lamp and headed to his own bedroom, he knew it wasn't true anymore. The ranch wasn't all that mattered, not by a long shot. The next morning brought clear skies and the usual routine of ranch life, though a certain awkwardness lingered between Liam and Dahlia. They were carefully polite with each other, the easy companionship of recent weeks temporarily replaced by a formality that neither acknowledged but both felt keenly. 3 days later, a messenger from town arrived with news that shattered their fragile equilibrium. Liam was mending a saddle on the porch when the rider approached. After a brief conversation, he came into the kitchen where Dahlia was preparing the midday meal. "There's news from town," he said without preamble. "Apparently a man has been asking about you at the general store. Says he's your brother-in-law." Dahlia's face drained of color. "Robert is here?" "In Cottonwood Springs." The rider didn't mention a name, just that a man claiming to be your late husband's brother was looking for you and the children. Liam studied her reaction with growing concern. "Dahlia, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." She sank into a chair, her hands trembling slightly. "Robert Evans was never a kind man, even when my husband was alive. After the mining accident, She took a steadying breath. "He wanted to take the children. Said they should be raised by blood family, not by a woman who couldn't possibly provide for them properly. He tried to take James and Emma from you? Liam's voice hardened. He filed papers with the court, claiming I was an unfit mother because I had to work, that the children would be better off with him and his wife in Denver. Her eyes met Liam's, filled with a fear he hadn't seen before. I left Colorado before the hearing. I couldn't risk losing them. Understanding dawned on Liam. So you didn't just come to Montana for work. You were running from him. Yes, she admitted. It was wrong, perhaps, but I couldn't bear the thought of my children being taken from me. They're all I have left of Thomas. Her voice broke on her husband's name. Without thinking, Liam reached across the table and took her hand. You did what any mother would do to protect her children. But now he's found us, she whispered. And I have no legal standing here. No friends or connections to help me fight him if he pursues his claim. You have me, Liam said firmly. I won't let him take your children. She looked up at him, hope and doubt warring in her expression. How can you stop him if he has legal papers? I don't know yet, Liam admitted. But I'll figure it out. He squeezed her hand. Do the children know about their uncle's attempts to take them? No, she said. I've tried to shield them from it. They know their uncle wasn't kind to me after their father died, but nothing more. Good. Let's keep it that way for now. Liam stood, his mind racing through possibilities. I need to go into town, find out more about this man and what he's saying. I should come with you, Dahlia said, rising. No, Liam said firmly. Stay here with the children. Keep them close to the house. I'll be back as soon as I can. She nodded, though he could see she was still frightened. Be careful. Robert can be persuasive when he wants to be. So can I, Liam assured her. And I have the advantage of being on my own property in my own territory. That counts for something out here. As he rode toward town, Liam's mind churned with possibilities. He had no legal standing to interfere in a family matter between Dahlia and her brother-in-law. But he also knew he couldn't stand by and watch her children be taken from her. Children who had come to mean more to him than he had ever expected. In town, he went straight to Henderson's store, where he found the proprietor serving a well-dressed man with a city accent. Liam immediately pegged him as Robert Evans. Henderson, he called, ignoring social niceties. A word. Henderson excused himself and came over to where Liam stood near the door. Bradshaw, didn't expect to see you in town so soon after Sunday. That man, Liam said quietly. Is he asking about Mrs. Evans? Henderson nodded. Says he's her brother-in-law. Been looking for her and the children for months. Claims she fled Colorado with the children against court orders. And you believe him? Liam asked, his voice dangerously low. Not my place to believe or disbelieve, Henderson said carefully. But he has papers that look official enough. Mr. Bradshaw, the well-dressed man interrupted, approaching them. I couldn't help overhearing my name. Robert Evans. He extended his hand, which Liam pointedly ignored. What do you want with Mrs. Evans and her children? Liam demanded. Evans smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Family business, Mr. Bradshaw. I understand my sister-in-law has been working at your ranch. I'm here to bring her and my niece and nephew back to Denver, where they belong with family. They seem perfectly content where they are, Liam said coldly. I'm sure they do, Evans replied smoothly. Dahlia has always been good at making herself comfortable in new situations. The insinuation in his tone was unmistakable. But the fact remains that she left Colorado against court instructions. I have papers granting me temporary guardianship of the children pending a final hearing. He reached into his jacket and produced an official-looking document, which he handed to Liam. As you can see, everything is in order. I simply want what's best for my brother's children. Liam scanned the document, his jaw tightening. It did indeed appear to grant Robert Evans temporary custody of James and Emma Evans until a court could determine final arrangements. This was issued in Colorado territory, Liam pointed out. It has no standing here. Perhaps not technically, Evans conceded. But do you really think the local judge will side with a woman who fled legal proceedings against the children's only male blood relative? Especially when that woman is living unchaperoned with a single man on a remote ranch. His smile turned cruel. I've already spoken with several upstanding citizens of this town who share my concerns about the arrangement at your ranch. Liam fought the urge to punch the smugness off Evans's face. Mrs. Evans is my housekeeper. It's a respectable position. Of course, Evans said with mock sincerity. I'm sure that's all it is. He took back the document. I'll be riding out to your ranch tomorrow to collect my niece and nephew. I suggest you prepare Mrs. Evans for our arrival. It will be easier on the children if she doesn't make a scene." As Evans turned and walked away, Henderson let out a low whistle. "That's a nasty piece of work," he murmured. "He's not taking those children," Liam said with quiet intensity. Henderson gave him a shrewd look. "You got a plan?" "I'm working on one," Liam replied, his mind racing. "Henderson, I need a favor." By the time Liam returned to the ranch, the sun was setting. He found Dahlia waiting anxiously on the porch, her face pale with worry. "He's coming tomorrow," Liam said without preamble as he dismounted. "He has papers from Colorado granting him temporary guardianship." Dahlia's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh God, what are we going to do?" "We're going to get married," Liam said simply. She stared at him, certain she had misheard. "What?" "It's the only way," Liam explained, coming up the porch steps. "Evans's claim rests partly on you being a single woman without means to support the children. If you're married to a landowner with a stable income, his argument loses much of its force." "But marriage," Dahlia whispered. "Liam, you can't be serious." "I've never been more serious," he insisted. "Judge Parker is riding out here at first light tomorrow." Henderson sent a messenger to his ranch. "We'll be married before Evans arrives." "This is insanity," Dahlia protested. "You can't marry me just to stop Robert from taking the children." "Why not?" Liam demanded. "It solves the problem. Marriage isn't something to enter into lightly." Her voice rose with emotion. "It's not just a legal arrangement. It's a lifetime commitment." "I understand that," Liam said, his voice softening. "Dahlia, look at me." When she met his gaze, he continued. "This isn't just about stopping Evans. These past months with you and the children, they've changed everything. The ranch isn't just land and cattle anymore. It's a home. You made it a home." Tears filled her eyes. "Liam, let me finish," he said gently. "I never thought I'd want a family. I convinced myself the frontier was no place for love, that a man out here was better off alone. But I was wrong. So damn wrong." He took her hands in his. "I'm not proposing just to stop Evans. I'm proposing because I love you. And James and Emma too. I want you to stay, not as my housekeeper, but as my wife. As a family." A tear slipped down Dahlia's cheek. "You love me. More than I thought possible," Liam admitted. "And I hope you might feel something for me too." "I do," she whispered. "But everything is happening so fast. Robert arriving, this proposal." "I know," Liam agreed. "And if circumstances were different, I'd court you properly. Take time to show you how much you mean to me. But we don't have that luxury right now." He squeezed her hands. "This isn't how I imagined proposing, but the feeling behind it is real, Dahlia. I love you. I want to build a life with you and the children. Will you marry me?" She searched his face, looking for any sign of doubt or hesitation. Finding none, she took a deep breath. "Yes," she said softly. "Yes, I'll marry you." The relief on his face was palpable. "Thank you," he breathed. "Don't thank me yet," she said with a watery laugh. "You're getting a wife and 2 children in one day. You might regret such a large family so suddenly." He smiled, bringing her hands to his lips. "Never." "How do we tell the children?" she asked. "Together," Liam said. "Right now." James and Emma were playing quietly in their room when Liam and Dahlia entered. They looked up with curious expressions. "Children," Dahlia began, sitting on the edge of the small bed. "We have some news to share with you." "Is it about Uncle Robert?" James asked, surprising both adults. At their startled looks, he added, "I heard you talking earlier. Is he coming to take us away?" Dahlia exchanged a glance with Liam before addressing her son. "Your uncle is coming tomorrow, yes. But he's not taking you anywhere." "Promise?" Emma asked in a small voice, clutching her rag doll. "I promise," Dahlia assured her. "In fact, that's what our news is about. Liam has asked me to marry him, and I've said yes. We're going to be a family, all of us together." The children's reactions were immediate and vastly different. Emma squealed with delight, launching herself into Liam's arms with complete trust. James, however, remained seated, his expression serious. "James," Dahlia prompted gently, "what are you thinking? Does this mean Liam will be our new pa?" he asked directly. Liam knelt down to be at eye level with the boy. "I would be honored to be your pa, James. But I know I can never replace your father. He will always be your real pa, and we'll make sure you and Emma remember him." James considered this solemnly. "Would Pa want you to be our new pa?" The question caught Liam off guard. He looked to Dahlia for help, but she seemed equally moved by her son's perceptiveness. "I never knew your father," Liam said honestly, "but I know he loved you and Emma very much. And I believe he would want someone to love and protect you and your mother. That's what I promised to do, if you'll let me." After a long moment, James nodded. "Okay, but I still get to help with the cattle, right?" Liam laughed, relief flooding through him. "Absolutely. This ranch will be yours someday, after all." The boy's eyes widened at this revelation. "Really, really," Liam confirmed. "That's what fathers do. They build something to pass on to their children." Judge Parker arrived at dawn the next morning, looking rumpled and irritated at being dragged out so early. However, once Liam explained the situation, the judge's demeanor changed. "Evans came to see me yesterday," Parker admitted. "Seemed too slick by half. I didn't like how he talked about the widow or the children." He eyed Liam speculatively. "This marriage, it's not just for show?" "No, sir," Liam said firmly. "I love Dahlia and her children. We would have married eventually, but Evans's arrival forced our hand." Parker nodded, satisfied. "Good. Marriage isn't something to enter into lightly." The ceremony itself was brief, but meaningful. Dahlia wore her best dress, a deep blue that brought out the color of her eyes. Emma had picked wildflowers for her mother's hair, and James stood proudly beside Liam, trying to mimic his straight-backed stance. As they exchanged vows in the main room of the ranch house, with morning lights streaming through the windows, Liam felt a certainty he had never experienced before. This was right. This was what the ranch had been missing all along. Not just a housekeeper, but a family to fill it with life and love. "By the authority vested in me by the Montana Territory," Judge Parker concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Liam drew Dahlia into a gentle kiss, their first. It was brief, mindful of the children watching, but it held a promise of deeper affection to come. They had barely finished signing the marriage certificate when the sound of approaching horses reached them. Parker glanced out the window. "Looks like your brother-in-law has arrived," he observed. "With the sheriff, no less." Liam squared his shoulders. "Let's get this over with." Robert Evans's face when he entered the ranch house and saw Judge Parker was a study in confusion. When his eyes fell on the marriage certificate on the table, confusion gave way to anger. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "Good morning, Mr. Evans," Judge Parker said calmly. "I've just had the pleasure of performing a marriage ceremony for Mr. and Mrs. Bradshaw." "This is preposterous," Evans sputtered. "She's clearly married him to circumvent my legal claim to the children." "That's a serious accusation," the sheriff said, frowning. "Do you have evidence of such?" "They weren't even courting a week ago," Evans exclaimed. "Actually," Liam interjected, "Mrs. Evans, Mrs. Bradshaw now, has been living at my ranch for nearly 4 months. Our affection developed naturally during that time." He stepped forward, placing himself between Evans and Dahlia. "The children are now legally my stepchildren, Mr. Evans. Your claim, tenuous as it was given that it originated in another territory, is now null and void." Evans turned to the sheriff. "Are you going to allow this travesty? These children belong with blood relatives, not some rancher who married their mother for convenience." The sheriff looked uncomfortable. Judge Parker performed the ceremony legally. "If Mrs. Bradshaw entered into the marriage willingly." He glanced at Dahlia questioningly. "I did," she said firmly. "I love my husband, Sheriff. And he loves me and my children. We're a family." As if to underscore her point, Emma chose that moment to slip her small hand into Liam's. "Papa Liam promised we could stay forever," she announced. "And Papa Liam keeps his promises." The simple declaration from the child seemed to deflate Evans somewhat. He looked from Emma to James, who stood protectively close to his mother, and finally to Judge Parker. "This won't be the end of the matter," Evans warned. "I believe it is," Judge Parker contradicted him. "Mrs. Bradshaw is now a married woman with a stable home and a husband who can provide for her children. No court in this territory would remove children from such a situation, especially to send them across territorial lines to an uncle they barely know." Evans's face darkened with fury, but he was intelligent enough to recognize defeat, at least for now. "This isn't over," he said, pointing at Dahlia. "You'll regret this." "The only thing I regret," Dahlia replied evenly, "is not seeing you for what you were sooner. Goodbye, Robert." After Evans and the sheriff had departed, Judge Parker lingered only long enough to offer his congratulations and some practical advice about filing the marriage certificate in town. When they were finally alone, the reality of what they had done began to sink in. They were married, a legal, binding commitment entered into under pressure and with little time for consideration. "Are you having second thoughts?" Liam asked quietly as they stood on the porch, watching the children play in the yard. "No," Dahlia said after a moment. "Are you?" "Not for a second," he assured her. "But I know this isn't how you imagined your life would go." She turned to face him. "Life rarely goes as we imagine, Liam. After Thomas died, I thought my heart had died with him. I never expected to find love again, especially not on a remote ranch in Montana territory." She took his hand. "But here we are." "Here we are," he agreed. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, the gesture tender and intimate. "I meant what I said, Dahlia. I love you. This may have happened faster than either of us planned, but my feelings are real." "As are mine," she admitted. "I think I've loved you since that day at the creek, when you taught James to skip stones. You showed such kindness to a child who wasn't yours." "He is mine now," Liam said, his voice thick with emotion. "They both are. And you are my wife." The word felt new and precious on his tongue. "My husband," she replied, the same wonder in her voice. Their second kiss, without an audience, was deeper and filled with promise. When they parted, both were breathless. "Well, Mrs. Bradshaw," Liam said, his eyes never leaving hers. "What shall we do now that we've averted the crisis?" "Now," she said, smiling, "we build our life together, day by day, just as we've been doing all along. Only now it's official." In the yard, James called for Liam to come see the fort he was building with sticks. Emma was arranging stones in patterns nearby, singing to herself. "Our children are waiting," Dahlia said softly. "Yes," Liam agreed, taking her hand. "They are." As they walked together toward James and Emma, Liam reflected on how completely his life had changed since that day he'd posted a notice for a ranch cook. He had sought only practical help, but had found a family instead. The frontier wasn't a place of isolation after all, but a place where love could take root and flourish, even in the harshest conditions. And as the sun shone down on the four of them, turning Dahlia's hair to gold and illuminating the children's laughing faces, Liam knew with absolute certainty that he had found something far more valuable than all the land and cattle in Montana territory. He had found home. 5 years later, the Bradshaw Ranch had expanded to twice its original size. The house had grown too, with additional rooms built for the growing family. 3-year-old Thomas Bradshaw, named for the father he would never know, toddled after his older siblings in the yard, determined to keep up despite his short legs. Dahlia stood on the porch, one hand resting on her rounded belly where their second child together grew. From her vantage point, she could see Liam and James riding in from the north pasture, their figures silhouetted against the setting sun. At 11, James was already showing signs of the man he would become, responsible, thoughtful, with his father's love of the land and his mother's compassion. Emma, at 9, was inside helping set the table for supper, taking her responsibilities as the oldest girl seriously. She had her father's mathematical mind and had already decided she would be a teacher someday. As Liam dismounted and helped James down from his own pony, Dahlia felt the familiar rush of love that had only deepened with the passing years. Their beginning may have been unorthodox, a desperate marriage to protect her children, but what had grown from that beginning was as real and solid as the mountains on the horizon. Robert Evans had made one more attempt to challenge their marriage a year after the wedding, but by then, Liam and Dahlia's devotion to each other was evident to anyone who saw them together. The judge had dismissed Evans's claims without hesitation, and they hadn't heard from him since. "Mama," James called, running ahead of Liam toward the house. "We saw a herd of wild horses. Pa says maybe next year I can help break one for my very own." "Did he now?" Dahlia replied, raising an eyebrow at her husband as he approached. "I said maybe," Liam clarified, winking at James before climbing the porch steps to kiss his wife. "How are you feeling today?" "Strong," she assured him. "This baby is more active than Thomas was. I think we might have a daughter this time." "As long as she's healthy," Liam said, placing his hand gently on her belly. "And as long as you don't overtax yourself." "I'm pregnant, not made of glass," Dahlia reminded him with affectionate exasperation. "I know," he conceded, "but you can't blame a man for worrying about his heart walking around outside his body." She smiled at the phrase he often used to describe his family. "Supper's nearly ready. Emma's setting the table." "Then I'd better get cleaned up," he said, kissing her once more before heading inside. As the evening settled over the ranch, with the family gathered around the table that had expanded to accommodate them all, Dahlia caught Liam's eye across the bobbing heads of their children. The look they shared held 5 years of memories, challenges overcome, and love that had only deepened with time. From a desperate arrangement born of necessity had grown something beautiful and enduring, a love strong enough to withstand the harshest Montana winter, a family bonded not just by blood and marriage, but by choice and devotion, and a home filled with the laughter and warmth that Liam had once believed impossible on the frontier. It had begun with a simple notice posted at noon in a small-town general store, answered by a widow with 2 children and little hope. But from that humble beginning had sprung the greatest happiness either of them had ever known. Proof that even in the wild frontier, love could take root and flourish against all odds.